Good morning, y'all, and welcome to Need to Know. Let's get started. So today we're going to talk about the war in Iran, the news happening with Graham Platner, and then we're going to talk about some more uplifting topics like the World Cup and America's 250th. So we're going to dive right in with the war in Iran. According to the New York Times, 170 Iranian military targets were hit on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week. And that's according to the Pentagon. That's who they cited. It was the most intense round of strikes. And Trump posted on social media that the ceasefire is officially over. Iran's health ministry said the attacks killed at least 14 people and injured 78 others across 5 provinces. The U.S. strikes happened after Iran allegedly attacked 3 ships that were in the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has also made additional attacks on U.S. bases in the region that do not appear to have made much damage. So that's the up-to-date, like what has happened over the past week in Iran. Gas prices were steadily dropping. Hamilton really likes to get involved with Need to Know. I don't like the weekly rise. Usually he doesn't get involved. Need to Know, he likes to get involved. So we're going to hear his voice as well. But gas prices were steadily dropping since the end of May, and they went up 5 cents overnight after these strikes. However, they're still lower than they were in the spring. He is hitting my camera now, so if you saw that bounce, he is, yes, being very involved. Okay. So I don't like talking about gas prices when talking about the war, but that was like the thing that kept coming up. Gas prices are going up again. And the reason I don't really like talking about the gas prices in the news is just there's a war going on and people are suffering. So I think that's a little bit more important than the gas prices here in the US. It is also thundering and lightning outside. There is a storm going on. So forgive me if you can hear that. So yeah, I like to focus more on what's happening in the actual country that is that is involved in this war. So how do I deal with this type of news? The government in Iran killed anywhere between 6,000 to 30,000 protesters in January, which was one of the events that led up to this war starting. Of course, there's plenty of arguments around why this war started and stuff like that, but the Iranian government was suppressing the civilian population, and the whole world was not okay with that. This wasn't something that was disputed. Now, whether this was the right response can be debated, but that is true. The numbers on how many protesters were actually killed were, it's a very wide range, 6,000 to 30,000. And the reason that was because the Iranian government has a very capable propaganda arm, and even to Western sources. So it's very hard to get information in and out of the country that isn't controlled by the government. And this is just a reminder to be critical of the news, be critical of what I say, be critical of what journalists say. Don't be critical to the journalists, preferably, unless they're actually doing something that should be criticized. But typically, journalists get information from official sources. It's how journalism has operated, because usually that's like where we can get dependable information. However, in authoritarian governments, we it's a little bit harder to get accurate information, right? And so we make mistakes too. And it's really hard as a reporter who is making $30,000 a year to fight a government that's so massive and has so many resources. So blame the people in power. But this was something that I remember at the beginning of this war thinking, wow, that's something that I wasn't aware of. And that it was interesting to hear analysts talk about like why it was so disputed how many people were actually killed during those protests. And it's because of the massive propaganda arm of the Iranian government. The war has killed about 3,500 people, including 1,700 civilians. That is coming from the Ministry of Health in Iran. With stuff like this, you kind of just have to hope and pray that the powers that be will find a peaceful solution, and that ensures international security, and hopefully the people in Iran can get the government that they want, right? We want everyone to have a government that serves them, right? So hopefully it will work out. If you want, the biggest thing I think people can do in this situation is to stay informed. Stay informed. There is the Center for Human Rights in Iran that is a group of human rights activists, journalists, reporters, content creators that really want to have free communication in Iran and free access to internet. So definitely that's a good source of information. And I think staying informed and staying vigilant about the issues happening in the world is one of the best ways for us to engage with it. Another thing is you can donate to organizations like the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders, because those organizations are helping the people on the ground that are not involved in this conflict, that are just trying to live their lives. So that's definitely something you can do. And let's all hope this ends soon. Our next story is about Graham Platner. This is the Democratic candidate for senator in Maine. I am not from Maine. I did not know Graham Platner's name before this last week, and then he became very famous, and not in a good way. He officially withdrew from the race after a woman came forward and accused him of sexual assault. The Maine Democratic Party plans to hold a convention to determine who will replace him before the deadline, which is July 27th. So if you're in Maine and you're a member of the Democratic Party, this will be your opportunity to say who you want to replace him in the election. There's a lot of stuff happening around this, which is why I chose to talk about this story today, even though, like, Graham Platner, like, for folks down here in Georgia, probably didn't know his name before all of this happened. And the main thing is the Democratic Party has had a little bit of a bad taste in its mouth, right? After the Biden-Harris debacle, where former President Joe Biden stepped back from running in the race for his reelection, and the Democratic Party named Kamala Harris as the nominee, and without anybody actually being able to decide whether or not they wanted Harris to be their nominee for president. And so the Democratic Party now is kind of stuck with not wanting to do that again because it was very unpopular, and being able to figure out who's the next candidate in 2 weeks, when these types of elections take years of planning. So we will see what happens, and hopefully it will all work out. Supporters of Platner did express their just disgust and disappointment with his reported behavior. Obviously, I didn't have a personal stake in this game. I wasn't following this race. This wasn't a race that impacts me because I'm in Georgia. But I personally think it's good our leaders are held accountable. I will say that a lot of times when this happens, people are convicted in public opinion and not in the court of law, which I think is an important distinction to remember. However, I think having certain standards of conduct for our elected officials is expected. And we expect that our elected officials follow the law. So, yeah, hopefully they find a good replacement and they will have a good and fair election in November. And the last thing I want to talk about today is more uplifting news, which I am happy to talk about because I have been very uplifted with what's been happening with the FIFA World Cup. And I know there has been some disputes recently with the FIFA World Cup, with the president getting involved and everything like that. Politics aside, the news surrounding the teams coming to America, the fans coming to the US, and the Americans who have welcomed these teams and fans, and just how the international community has been able to engage with the US and Americans has been so uplifting to me. It's been so nice to hear people from the international community saying that, hey, this place is actually cool. Like, we enjoy barbecue, we enjoy ranch, like we enjoy going to these places and seeing how big America is and seeing how great everything is. And everybody's been so welcoming and wonderful. And that is just like so great. I was so uplifted hearing the stories, seeing the videos, the reels, TikToks, and everything of people just having a great time. So keep it up. Americans, keep up the welcoming attitude. And we'll end the FIFA World Cup this week or is it this week? It's like July 19th, I think. It's coming up. The end of it is nigh. And let's keep it up and keep the momentum going. And yeah, hopefully whoever wins, that'll be cool. Congrats in advance. But yeah, we will not talk about sports a lot on this because I'm not a sports person and I don't know a lot about sports. So yeah. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was mainly a question, because we just had the 250th birthday of the United States in this country. And that's a pretty big feat. And it sparked a lot of conversation between experts and just everyone about what we hope the next 250 years will bring. So I really want to pose a question about, what do you hope the next 250 years of American future will bring, and how do you think we'll get there? And I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments. So that's it for today's episode of Need to Know. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I hope you... Ooh, goodness, that was lightning. Oh, goodness, that's thunder. That is definitely scaring Hamilton. All right, sorry. Hopefully you'll start your week a little bit more peaceful than I am. As you start your week, though, just remember you are alive, you are whole, and you are here. So thanks for watching. Have a great week.